Imagine two children born on the same day, one under the gunfire of a refugee camp, so fierce that bedtime feels like a gamble, one in a quiet suburban home where the loudest sound is the lawnmower on Saturday morning. Years later, they stand at very different crossroads, not because one had more grit, but because life dealt them very different hands before they even knew how to play. We like to tell ourselves we're the authors of our own stories, but what if those opening paragraphs were already written for us? What if the social worlds we inherit and the early experiences we endure frame the very choices we think are ours? Over a century ago, Émile Durkheim asked why rates of suicide varied so wildly from place to place. His groundbreaking study on suicide revealed it wasn't just individual despair driving people over the edge, it was the strength or collapse of the social bonds around them. When family ties, friendships, or community rituals frayed, people felt untethered, what Durkheim called egoistic cases. When societies buckled under rapid change, economic collapse, war, sudden wealth, people lurched into anemic despair. Think of a factory town hit by automation overnight. Today's stable paycheck disappears. Tomorrow, a former assembly line worker can't find purpose. That disorientation, when the rules you lived by vanish, shows how much our mental well being depends on structures we didn't choose. Zoom in from society to the individual mind, and you find another kind of inheritance childhood. Not the fairy tale childhood, but the messy reality for millions neglect, abuse, chronic stress. These are not just stories we tell at dinner. Neuroscience shows early trauma rewires our brains. Imagine a child who awakens every night to shouts, slam doors, possibly worse. Their stress response system, like the HPA axis, learns to live in survival mode. That hypervigilance spills into adulthood. They might misread neutral expressions as threats or struggle to trust. One 2013 study compared adults who suffered trauma before age 5 to those traumatized later and found distinct patterns of brain development, especially in areas governing emotion and impulse control. Here's a brief story. Maya grows up with a mother who oscillates between affection and rage. As an adult, Maya finds herself unable to relax, convinced that any sign of calm will be ripped away. She excels in crisis management roles. She thrives on adrenaline, but a simple, "How was your weekend?" can send her heart racing. That pattern isn't Maya's choice. It's a survival blueprint inscribed in her nervous system long before she could spell her own name. We've seen how society and childhood sculpt us. Now imagine our ancestors' experiences whispering down through generations. That's the realm of epigenetics. Chemical switches on our DNA that don't change the code but change how it's read. In striking animal experiments, mice trained to fear a particular scent birthed pups that reacted nervously to it. Even though those pups never encountered danger themselves, researchers traced this to methyl groups added to the sperm DNA of the fearful parent, tweaking gene expression in the offspring. Humans show parallel patterns. Studies of Holocaust survivors and their children reveal altered stress response profiles. Children whose parents endured unspeakable trauma carry biological echoes that shape cortisol levels and emotional regulation. A landmark study of Syrian refugees found war related stress in grandmothers linked to DNA methylation differences in grandchildren. In the winter of 1944 to 1945, a Nazi blockade left parts of the Netherlands in severe famine. Babies conceived during that hunger winter went on to have higher rates of obesity, diabetes, and decades later, researchers traced these health outcomes to epigenetic changes in the IGF2 gene, an imprint set in utero when maternal nutrition was critically low. This single historical event shows how harsh conditions affect not only those directly exposed, but ripple across lifespans via biological markers. This isn't science fiction. It means some of our tendencies, anxiety under pressure, heightened vigilance, even baseline mood may owe as much to our grandparents' ordeals as to our own life stories. So, are we puppets on epigenetic strings? Hardly. Philosophers today often embrace compatibilism. Our choices are real, but they arise in a context we didn't choose. We don't flip from no free will to complete autonomy overnight. Instead, freedom lives in how we navigate the world those contexts create. Think of it like a river channel. The banks, social structures, childhood patterns, biological legacies guide the flow. Within that current, we still steer. We still decide whether to swim against the tide or drift along. Our capacity for self reflection and deliberate action is itself part of human nature, shaped but not extinguished by circumstance. Acknowledging these hidden currents reframes our approach to accountability. In law, this perspective supports more nuanced sentencing, recognizing that someone raised in violent chaos may require rehabilitation rather than purely punitive measures. In therapy, it reinforces trauma informed care, validating that clients' challenges stem from deep rooted patterns, not moral failings. But awareness cuts both ways. It also invites personal responsibility. Once we grasp how we've been shaped, we gain the power to intervene. We can learn new patterns, seek support, and deliberately rewrite our own scripts. So, how do we translate these insights into everyday life? Look beyond surface behaviors. When someone snaps at a partner or crumbles under stress, ask silently what currents drove that reaction. So, where does that leave us? Not with neat answers, but with deeper questions. How much of who you are today traces back to voices you've never heard? Your parents, your grandparents, your communities? What hidden currents steer your thoughts when you believe you're sailing free? Perhaps the most valuable act isn't fixing all the pieces, but learning to notice their edges, to hold our own choices lightly, knowing they emerge from shaped waters, to listen for the faintest echoes of the past and ask what they might teach us, not to conclude our story, but to begin asking new questions. In that space between what we inherit and what we decide, curiosity becomes its own kind of freedom, and maybe that's enough of a compass for now.